Hello all and good afternoon. My name is Kunal. I work for Dixit Technologies as a delivery manager. At this conference of Prompt Engineering 2025, we are going to share our experiences on the supply chain resiliency model, what we faced during the pandemic. In this particular session, we are going to talk about some key challenges, what automation was done, how it was done, and what are the key takeaways. So let's dive in. We all know that COVID-19 pandemic gave us a very different world what we are hearing today. All those unprecedented disruptions made it very difficult to operate the way it was our regular norm. Activities which were physically allowed were restricted. Restrictions, workforce limitations, and everything became very difficult to manage. That was a wake up call to initiate a digital transformation. When I say digital transformation, I am talking about how do we make sure that the manual processes and physical dependencies are managed in such a way that you get an accelerated digital experience. All those activities are required for the survival in this crisis world. And that basically emerges you as a stronger, more resilient partner in the industry. Let's see what are the things that we took as action. Today in this journey, we will talk about some of the crisis management, some automation solutions, the resiliency framework that we built, how the resiliency framework helped us in the digital acceleration, and as part of the digital acceleration, what strategic advantages were achieved. We will also examine the lessons from Zensar Technologies supply chain transformation and provide some actionable takeaways for strengthening the resilience against future disruptions while unlocking sustained efficiency gains. Looking at the deep vulnerabilities the pandemic exposed to us. First of all, what used to work in the office environment is disrupted. That is not going to work. All those paper-based order processing, email coordinations, spreadsheet tracking, that is a bottleneck when it comes to remote working. The physical presence requirements in terms of field operations, equipment installation, partner training, all those because of the lockdown were not able to process. Everything was at halt. At the same time, in terms of supply chain, inventory is the key, as you all know. Inventory had a limited visibility, and limited visibility meaning delayed information leads to delayed decisions, which basically amplifies the impact of these disruptions. And then coming to our infrastructure, which is the networking piece. The centralized and inflexible network basically means it's a single point of failure. If one node goes down, your environment is collapsed. There was no plan B because plan A always worked, but that was not the case during the pandemic. So, what is the operational lifeline of partners and field automation? Let's take a look at that. Build the thread here. So, partner and field automation emerged as an essential capability for organizations navigating the pandemic. Other than doing the incremental improvements, those technologies provided transformational capabilities that enabled business continuity under the extraordinary constraints. Through automation of order processing, digital partner enablement, and remote field operations, organizations maintained a critical function while competitors struggled. And since we implemented these technologies, strategies, and have shown that how the world has changed and how it is important to recover from the crisis. In terms of taking a top-bottom approach, we basically divided the work in three areas. First is order capture. Second, processing. Third is fulfillment. So automated intake from the partners through API integration eliminated manual data entry. That was the first step that was taken. Second is about processing and validation of the particular order in our new middleware system, which had checked the inventory, checked the routing options. Everything was done without a human intervention. And third and lastly is the fulfillment, which is basically about triggering the shipping, updating the systems in terms of if the shipment has received or not, and receiving and creating notifications in real time. And as an impact, the transition latency dropped dramatically. Orders that used to take days previously now are taking hours. Remote teams maintained full operational capability without physical presence in the office. That enabled continuity when lockdown was actually in progress. Going further down, we had also enabled direct partner equipment shipping and digital tracking. That means we have real-time visibility, we have streamlined distribution and automated notifications. In terms of real-time visibility, GPS and IoT sensors were used extensively to eliminate any uncertainty during the shipping status, enabling proactive exception management. In terms of distribution, rather than taking that equipment and shipping it to the centralized warehouse, we bypass that and directly ship to the customer's partner's location. That basically accelerates the delivery times. And in terms of tracking, the automated notifications were enabled in terms of every milestone, in terms of dispatch, transit, shipment, and that was all done through emails. This particular approach transformed distribution from liability into a competitive advantage. Partner received with full transparency, while internal team focused on strategy activities rather than tracking shipments. Going into remote configuration and virtual training to adapt to what we did in the past, right? In terms of order management, validation, milestone, and creating the real-time tracking, we also enabled a remote configuration and virtual training platforms. It was added up in terms of giving a more further partner satisfaction. The remote configuration was enabled in such a way that technicians could remotely configure equipment, eliminating the travel needs. Automated configuration templates ensured consistency, and digital audits had a compliance documentation without any paperwork. To enhance that further, we created a virtual training platforms which had interactive modules enabling partner training, on-demand access, and automated assessment, which was basically checking the competency and identified any knowledge gaps. As a business impact, operations that previously required expensive site visit, that was not required anymore. Partner enablement accelerated, expanding capacity while travel budgets were still frozen because of the pandemic. The shift to remote operations became permanent, delivering sustained cost savings beyond the crisis. Coming to the resilient design framework, building for the uncertainty, we took a modular architecture approach. We broke it down. The architecture has to be modular in such a way that component-based system allowed rapid configuration and modular replacement, significantly reducing recovery times. We had automated monitoring installed. That way we can check the real-time health of the systems, predicting any issues. In addition to that, there were simulation testing scenarios created to make sure that everything is running as robust during the crisis management. And to back up, we had a comprehensive documentation in place to have ensured which had rapid onboarding, proper knowledge transfer, continuity management during the staff unavailability times. As a result, we could see that if you look at the chart from fully automated to traditional approaches, organizations which were working in the automated mode can see a 15 times faster recovery rate in terms of traditional peers. And that is what we achieved during this automation phase. So the key insight is that recovery speed directly correlated with the digital maturity. Automation provided the agility needed to pivot the operations quickly while manual processes had frictions. So this was the recovery rate that we see, and that had augmented everything in terms of how we move from manual processes to automated processes. Now, how do we get into a digital adoption mode and act as an accelerator? So the digital piece is done, but now it needs to be adopted by partners and also the vendors management. So there was an adoption speed that was put into place. Activities that used to take years were done in months. We had remote monitoring for organizations which enabled real-time monitoring. We did investment in terms of post-pandemic budget allocation for supply chain automation compared to pre-COVID levels. And as we know that the digitization era is going to be sustained, so there was a need to have a permanent operational improvement done on all these areas. So what are the key capabilities for long-term efficiency? The first, as I mentioned, remote monitoring. Without a physical presence, how do I make sure that my equipment's health is maintained? There is a self-healing into place. How does the supply chain status continues to operate functionally, and I get the statuses of those supply chain modules as and when we move the equipment from one place to other. Second is about real-time inventory visibility. Automated tracking across the entire supply chain, enabling data-driven decisions and reducing the stockouts by 60%. That's a big number in terms of, because when it comes to supply chain, inventory is your key. If you run out of stock, that means your entire pipeline is stuck. And we want to make sure that never happens. Contactless fulfillment, automated picking, shipping, packing, all those key things are done contactless because the systems are put up in such a way that they work seamlessly. What are the practical approaches that we took during the automation? So embedding automation into your supply chain. We started with a pain point. We identified the high friction processes causing the most operational. That was the first thing on the drawing board. From there, we understood that we have to make sure that our architecture is modular in nature. That way, whenever changes are to be done, they are rapid, faster, and easier to maintain. After the modulation of the infrastructure, we worked towards the integration of the partner ecosystem. We want to make sure that the true resiliency requires coordination across the entire supply chain network, including partners, ecosystem, and the vendor ecosystem. We invested in training, making sure that everybody understands what are the areas that needs to be done for effective supply chain management. And at the last, we did test and iterate. Regular solution testing validates resiliency. So continuous improvement ensures systems evolve while changing needs. So these approaches aren't just theoretical. They are practical lessons from the organization that successfully navigated the pandemic. So basically, you start small, prove a value, and then scale systematically as and when you move towards your goal. What are the strategic advantages and why digital maturity matters? As we know that the enhanced agility basically means that your rapid response to market change, allowing organizations to quickly pivot operations, reconfigure supply networks, and uncertainty becomes an opportunity. Second is about partner enablement. Automated tools and real-time collaboration strengthens ecosystem relationship. Partners amplify capacity without signifying significant cost increase. And third, enduring competitive advantage. Automation provides permanent benefits, lower cost, faster cycles, and superior customer experience. This creates a sustainable market differentiation. Coming to the final key takeaways, what we did in terms of building a resilient supply chain network. So automation is non-negotiable. In the today's world of AI, that is how it's going to be. And pandemic proved that the manual processes are just not going to sustain. Partners and field automation aren't optional, but they are essential capabilities for the modern supply chain operating in uncertain environments. Resiliency requires intentional design. This particular activity did not just happen over as an accident. To implement the resilience design framework, you have to have an architecture approach, automated monitoring, simulation testing, comprehensive documentation. So all were deliberate actions for the choices of the architecture that we took. That gave us a digital maturity and drive competition advantage. Organizations with mature automation capabilities recover 15 times faster. We know that based on the chart. At the same time, the stockout options were 60% less. That is a big number. That gives digital maturity, agility, and enables partner ecosystems and delivers sustained efficiency beyond the crisis. And so final point is start now and you have to build incrementally. Begin with a high impact pain point. Build modular, integrate partners, test them regularly because next disruptions is inevitable. But the question is, are you ready for that? That's my last slide. Thank you so much for this opportunity in terms of giving me into this session. And I had a great time. Hope you had some great learning. Thank you so much.